all over the top. Look at that. Doesn't that make your mouth water?
What's the one meal your mum would throw together with whatever was in the fridge and it somehow hit the spot every time? Back in the 70s, that meal usually came from one pot. No takeout, just casserole magic. So how did families manage to feed a crowd when time was short and wallets were even shorter? In this video, we're counting down 15 one-pot wonders. And at number 5, you'll meet the cheesy breakfast-for-dinner dish that saved the day. Let's kick things off with the creamy classic that had kids begging for seconds. Tuna Noodle Casserole was the ultimate pantry meal. You didn't need anything fancy, just a couple of cans of tuna, a can of cream of mushroom soup, some egg noodles, frozen or canned peas, and maybe a handful of shredded cheese if you were feeling wild. Toss it all together in a dish, top it with breadcrumbs or crushed crackers for that crispy topping, and bake it till bubbly. There was no stovetop juggling or sink full of pans, just one big casserole dish and a hungry family ready to dive in. It was comforting, cheap, and weirdly addictive. Even picky eaters couldn't resist the creamy goodness. How about if you didn't even have to boil anything? Just dump, bake, and dinner is ready. Chicken and rice bake was the definition of set it and forget it. Raw rice went straight into the casserole dish, followed by uncooked chicken thighs or drumsticks. Then came the magic. A can of cream of celery or mushroom soup, maybe a little broth, and a packet of Lipton onion soup mix sprinkled on top. Cover it with foil, slide it into the oven, and walk away. By the time the latest episode of the Brady Bunch was over, dinner was ready and the house smelled amazing. The rice soaked up all the juices from the chicken and soup mix, turning it into a creamy, flavorful base. The chicken fall off the bone tender. It was a warm, reliable hug in casserole form. Alright, that was delicious. But are you ready for something a little weirder? Like, what were they thinking kind of weird? Jell-O salad with tuna sounds like a prank, but it was a very real one-pot meal that graced more than a few dinner tables. The basic recipe? Lemon or lime-flavored gelatin, mixed with drained canned tuna, sliced olives, diced celery, and sometimes green peppers or hard-boiled eggs. All of it set into a mold and chilled until it jiggled like your Aunt Marge's disco moves. Why? Because gelatin was trendy, and combining salad with protein seemed like a health-conscious idea at the time. Let's get back to something creamy, cozy, and way more appetizing now. Chicken a la king was rich, creamy, and surprisingly simple for something that sounded like it belonged on a restaurant menu. It started with shredded cooked chicken, often from leftovers or a canned version, sautéed mushrooms, and diced green peppers or pimientos. Everything got tossed in a velvety white sauce made from butter, flour, milk, or sometimes just a can of cream of chicken soup. The whole mixture simmered into creamy perfection, and instead of pasta or rice, it was often served over toast points, biscuits, or even puff pastry, if you were feeling extra fancy. Rich and royal. But what if I told you the next dish cooked itself while the chef watched soap operas? Crock-Pot Mac and Cheese was the no-boil, no-bake miracle. All you needed was dry elbow macaroni, evaporated milk, shredded cheddar cheese, a couple of eggs, butter, milk, and a dash of seasoning. Dump it all into the slow cooker, give it a quick stir, and then let it do its thing for a few hours. The magic? No need to pre-cook the pasta. The macaroni cooked slowly right in the cheese sauce, soaking up all that flavor as it softened to the perfect texture. The result was rich, creamy, and borderline addictive. Now let's check out a dish that made leftover veggies feel like a real dinner. The Vegetable Medley Bake was every home cook's meatless magic trick. All it took were basic budget-friendly veggies like zucchini, tomatoes, onions, and maybe a can of mushrooms. Some recipes even called for green beans or corn. Layered in a baking dish, tossed with olive oil or butter, sprinkled with herbs, garlic, and maybe a little shredded cheese or breadcrumbs on top, it all went into the oven until golden and bubbling. Some added cooked rice or even leftover pasta to make it heartier. Colourful, healthy, and tasty. But what if you turned spaghetti into a pie? Sounds weird, right? Just you wait. Baked spaghetti pie wasn't your regular noodles in sauce dinner. It was part spaghetti, part quiche, and part pizza, all layered into one pan. First, you take cooked spaghetti and mix it with eggs and a little cheese, pressing it into a pie dish to form the crust. Then came a layer of tomato sauce, sometimes with veggies like mushrooms or bell peppers, and finally a thick layer of mozzarella or cheddar on top. Some families tossed it in olives, herbs, or even a splash of milk into the egg mix to make it fluffier. Once it baked, you sliced it like pie and served it in wedges. That's dinner and a party all in one pan. But what did folks make when the fridge was basically empty? Leftover Casserole Surprise wasn't a set recipe, it was more of a concept. You opened the fridge, saw half a cup of cooked rice, a bit of shredded chicken, some peas, a lonely spoonful of sour cream, maybe even last night's green beans, and tossed it all into one dish. To tie it together, you'd add a can of cream soup. Mushroom, celery, or chicken were the usual suspects. Sprinkle some cheese or breadcrumbs on top, bake it until it bubbled, and then dinner was done. Now let's bring in a little sweetness with a one-pot dish that felt like a mini vacation. The Hawaiian Chicken Bake was the 70s way of adding some flair to weeknight dinners. It started with bone-in chicken thighs or drumsticks arranged in a baking dish. Then came the fun part. Canned pineapple chunks, juice and all, sliced bell peppers, and a quick sauce made from soy sauce, garlic, and brown sugar. Sometimes a little vinegar or ginger was added for tang. Once baked, the chicken became sticky, juicy, and packed with that sweet, savory combo that felt exotic for the time. Ready to crank up the spices for a rice dish with serious flavor. One pot Spanish rice was the colorful, flavorful solution when you needed something quick, filling, and budget-friendly. Start with white rice. Sauté it in a bit of oil with chopped onions and garlic until slightly golden. Then add canned diced tomatoes, green bell peppers, tomato paste, water or broth, and season it with paprika, cumin, or even a little chili powder if you are feeling bold. Some versions included corn or kidney beans for extra heft, and everything simmered down into a steamy, fluffy dish that filled the whole house with savory, slightly spicy aroma. Spanish rice was a staple because it checked every box. Cheap, tasty, filling, and easy to make in one pot. But what if dinner time actually meant breakfast? Yeah, let's talk about that. The Breakfast-for-Dinner Casserole was a lifesaver. Eggs, diced potatoes, or even leftover hash browns, milk and shredded cheese formed the base. If you had leftover veggies like spinach, peppers, or onions, toss them in. Sometimes a few slices of bread were cubed and mixed in to soak up the egg mixture, making it even heartier. Everything got layered into a casserole dish and baked until golden, puffy, and cheesy. You didn't need any fancy meat, and most versions skipped it all together, or used a tiny bit of sausage or bacon crumbles when available. Now let's get into the golden cornbread magic that lived in every 70s kitchen. Creamed Corn Casserole was that golden, fluffy miracle that sat somewhere between a side dish and a dessert. It only needed a handful of ingredients. A can of creamed corn, a can of whole kernel corn drained, and a box of Jiffy cornbread mix, a couple of eggs, sour cream, and melted butter. Stir it all together in one bowl, pour it into a baking dish, and pop it in the oven. The result, a golden brown, soft, almost spoon bread-like casserole that was sweet, savory, and downright addictive. It paired well with anything, or stood on its own when times were tight. But are you ready for the ultimate bowl of comfort food from the South? Southern Chicken and Dumplings was the kind of dish that could make an entire household slow down. It started with bone-in chicken simmered gently in a pot of water with onions, carrots, and celery, until the meat was fall off the bone tender and the broth was rich and golden. Then came the dumplings, made from flour, baking powder, milk, and butter. Some folks rolled them thin and cut them into strips. Others dropped spoonfuls of dough right into the bubbling pot like little pillows. They cooked in the hot broth, soaking up all that flavor and thickening the soup into a creamy, hearty stew. But we're not done. Next up, the casserole that made broccoli cool. Cheesy Broccoli Rice Casserole was every mum's not-so-secret trick. The core ingredients were simple. cooked rice, frozen or lightly steamed broccoli flores, shredded cheddar cheese, and a can of cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup. Everything was mixed in one big bowl, then baked until bubbling and golden on the top. If you had Ritz crackers or cornflakes in the pantry, those might have been crushed and sprinkled over for that extra crunch. Some added onions or garlic powder for flavor, but the real magic came from how the creamy cheese masked the broccoli just enough to win over picky eaters. Who knew veggies could be this addictive? Now let's finish strong with the queen of all 70s one-pot meals. Chicken Tetrazzini was the queen of one-pot dinners. Despite its Italian-sounding name, it was an all-American comfort dish. The recipe started with cooked spaghetti noodles, shredded chicken, usually from a leftover roast or canned, sautéed mushrooms, and a generous helping of creamy sauce made from either a roux or, you guessed it, a couple of cans of cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup. Some recipes added peas or pimentos for colour, and many finished it with a thick layer of cheddar or parmesan on top. Once it baked, the top turned golden and crispy, while the inside stayed creamy and rich. Was one of these meals your family's go-to? Let us know in the comments.